So welcome to the session this evening. My name is Dr. Long. I'm the COO here at IQ. With us this evening, we have our guest, Chris Nash. So just while we wait for our attendees to join, I'm just going to speak a little bit about Chris. So Chris has an experience, many years of experience as a skills development facilitator, and most recently working at Montego Pet Nutrition. So that is in a factory environment. Obviously, skills development is extremely important in all environments, but in a factory where you have a high number of staff, it's critical. So we are very excited to have Chris join us this evening. Prior to that, Chris has been an educator, lots of experience with using IT systems. So I'm sure you're going to give us, I think you said you're going to give us a demo just now, Chris. No pressure. No pressure if you change your mind. But Chris has a lot of insight into how to maximize how you engage with your SETAs, which are obviously different depending on which industry you are in. And there's really a lot of opportunity there to access funding outside of the business's expenses and actually develop your staff from within. So as an institution of education, of course, we are excited for this presentation. But as a business ourselves, we also, we need to know more about how to maximize the SETA benefits and also how to use them. So Chris, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, for those of you that have just joined us, we are just going to be keeping you all on mute so that we can go through the presentation with Chris, and then we will do a Q&A at the end. However, if you'd like to introduce yourself so long, you all have the ability to use the chat function. I will start by saying hi, and then if you'd like to post your question in the chat, we will get to the chat at the end of the presentation. And you can also then at that point unmute yourself and ask Chris your questions directly, and I will just facilitate that with raised hands. Okay, so thank you again, Chris. Welcome. Over to you, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Amy. So I would like to welcome you all to this little discussion of skills development in 2020 Thrive, right? Every company has an HR department that handles hire and fire. But does your HR department handle inspire? Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Nash, and I'm the Learning Ambassador and Skills Development Facilitator from Montego Pet Nutrition. And I'm here today to discuss the importance of skills development within your company. Just a little legal note that they always make me say. They have me say that these opinions are my own and not of the company. I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of Montego. So this is just me and my experience. And the one thing I want to say is that you should be looking at development from a more holistic point of view, and that's what I hope to achieve today. You'll see down at the bottom of the right is the Learn, Do, Be More. That's our internal academy's little slogan for the year, and I think it's quite beautiful because it is in essence what we should be trying to achieve here. So if we can have our employees learn more, they can do more, and they can be more, not just as employees, but as people themselves. Corporate training should be more than just a checkbox exercise. It should be our opportunity to really make an impact in our staff as people and in the communities around us. So let's move on to our first section, why train staff. So this is a fairly well-known quote from Richard Branson: train people well enough that they can leave, treat them well enough that they don't want to. And isn't that quite wonderful? That's really how we should be looking at it. A lot of people try to do training that they're binding staff to long-term agreements, and they're looking at training as an investment in the company. But we should really be investing in the people. We shouldn't be investing in staff. We should be investing in the people in and around our communities, because the more we empower staff and not bind them, if they see training as an empowerment exercise and not as a binding exercise, they're more likely to engage. And we need to start thinking of training as a little more than just degrees and diplomas and long-term things. Micro-learning is a massive thing that's coming in. And it's a massive way to enable training within your company. If we start looking at short courses and tiny little pushes that the people have, because let's face it, a lot of us don't have the time to take on something as serious and as so much pressure as a degree or a diploma right now in our adult lives. So if we look at the micro learning, it's a nice little way to push staff in the right direction, enable them with a little bit, keep them current, keep them up to date. The other thing is that we've all, I mean, those of us who are a little more older, in our 40s and that, we tend to struggle with the uptake of Generation Z. Generation Z has a very different perspective on work than the older generations, and a lot of them don't know how to work hard. They have massive expectations, and it takes a lot of work to get them work ready. Is it worth all the effort? Well, I think so, because someone's going to have to teach them anyway. And there's a few gems that can come into the workforce and they're ready to start. But for the most part, we need to teach these young people how to commit and discipline and little things that us as older, I say older cringingly, but as older generations, we take it for granted. That little bit of guts, that little bit of grind that we used to and that we take for granted. We need to teach this. And you can get funding from your SETA to help you enable programs internally that can help these people with things like time management, balancing workloads, and even aligning to company goals. And these micro learning systems can help you align them and have them get the recognition and the priorities and the principles that they feel that they need to identify inside of work, and align them to the goals and that of your company. So obviously there's improved performance. That's a big goal. I mean, the company needs to keep running. As much as we like to invest in communities and invest in the people around us and invest in the people, we need to get performance done. We need people that can show up on time, do their work, be competent, and be actually a little more than just competent. So training can help you do this. It enhances the skills, it helps the knowledge, it leads them to better job performance. And with better job performance comes increased productivity. Well-trained staff can work more effectively, reducing errors, increasing output, and reducing costs. Obviously, you've got employee satisfaction. Training can help open opportunities and open perspectives that can lead to high morale and job satisfaction, and help people feel that they're more people and not just numbers on your job cards. Adaptability. It can help. I mean, obviously, we've seen that the workplace is very adaptable these days. Things like AI is changing the way that we work drastically. And your staff needs to be able to adapt to new technologies and new ways of doing things and incorporate that into their everyday life, that you as a company and them as people can move forward. And lastly, compliance. So we all know that there's certain regulations, there's certain things that we need to adhere to. In our factory environment, we have a lot of compliance stuff. We've got obviously the first aid, forklifts, health and safety things that we need to teach, firefighting. These are compliance things that are regulations. We have to have as a company enforce these, and we can get funding from government to do these compliance courses as well. So we're going to look at that a bit later. How to fund it. The only thing worse than training employees and losing them is not training them and keeping them. And that is it. A dud employee does not necessarily have to stay a dud employee, but replacing staff can be costly. There's the loss of actually having someone working at the particular station. There's the recruitment costs that go into it. And sometimes it can be cheaper just to spend a little money to fix what you got instead of replacing everything. So how do we fund it? Well, obviously it's budget allocation. You as a company need to make a training budget and need to put something forward. The last I looked, the general statistic was about 4% of salary turnover, salary costs was what bigger businesses were spending on training. So yes, you're spending 1% on your skills development levy, but you should be spending about 4 times that on your training budget. Grants and subsidies. Obviously, you can get grants and subsidies. That's why we're here. We have to talk about getting grants and subsidies from SETA. You can also get it from other organizations. You can partner with other organizations. I know that some industries, government has successful programs partnering with like the post office or Microsoft or those kind of agreements where businesses get together and align to improving it. There's also companies that deal with learnerships and internships that you can partner with to bring these resources into your company. You've got internal resources. So this is enabling internal resources where you can go and say, okay, I have someone who's particularly skilled in training or particularly skilled in this field, and enabling them as a training resource inside your business. I feel myself, I'm one of those examples. I started out in IT and they realized that I have a knack for content development, and that's how I landed up in the training sphere. Employee contributions, these are sort of joint efforts that you can have. So this is where you might part fund something. So you might part fund a degree, part fund a diploma, part fund some form of training, and the employer would have to put in some as well. This is highly effective because obviously they've got some skin in the game. The employees need to make sure that the investment pays off. What is training? Well, training is simply the process of teaching or learning a skill or job. So anything that encompasses in that can be classified as training. So if you're orientating, I mean, people forget this, but orientation into your business, your orientation programs, that is an essential part of training, because without that, the employee cannot function in your business. And I think all the SETAs recognize orientation as a vital part of the training program that you're doing internally. How do we put a cost to that? Well, the people doing the orientation obviously have a wage cost to the companies. So you can capture that quite easily. There's also the materials, if you have pamphlets, booklets, that kind of stuff. So we can all capture that as a training cost. Okay, into type of training, well, you've got the external training. So that's where you get someone like IQ Academy to come in, or you get someone to come and give particular skills and training from outside. You've got internal training that you give yourself, which could be ad hoc training. It could be a training program. We also have what we call compliance training. So that's the stuff that you have to do by law, first aid, health and safety reps. We've got forklifts and scissor lifts and those kind of things as well. You need to sit as a company and decide what is your goals and objectives of training. What do you want to accomplish? Training for the sake of training is just going to be leaking money ineffectively. So you need to sit as a company, and it's going to differ from company to company. Sorry, am I back?
Yes, you're back. Okay, are you back? I think you're back.
Yeah, I'm going to switch to 3G.
Sure.
On and off the whole time. Well, let's look into pick up my 3G. Goals and objectives. You need to sit as a company and say, what is your goals? You need to decide. And I was saying we were quite blessed in Montego that the MD said to me, if we invest money in someone and we teach them to be a salesman, and there's no sales position available, and they find work as a sales job somewhere else for the company, because our goals are to better our own and our environment and our employees and our communities. So from a point of view, from Montego side, because there's better opportunities that we can't provide, that's what we consider a win. Other companies are smaller budgets, they might consider that as extreme loss because of they've spent that on there. your objectives? Are your objectives to improve productivity? Is it to improve staff? Is it to improve people? And that's a discussion that you need to have managers to have a very clear definition that you're approaching this. We also say that you need to remember
Chris,
is that if you
sorry,
are spending, yeah.
Chris, you keep breaking up. Maybe you can just turn your video off for now.
Okay, give me a second.
Thanks.
Okay, is that a little better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We're on the Vodacom again.
Yeah.
Okay. Methods. One of the methods you need to look at is you need to look at, are you going to be doing in-person training? Are you going to be online training? Are you going to be using external providers? There's so many ways you can be doing training, and you need to work out how you as a company are going to embrace it and what methods you're going to focus on, and where you're going to spend your money. Developing internal online platforms is quite costly. But it is cheaper in the long run than doing in-person training if you're a larger company. If you're a smaller company, one-on-ones, and that is more attainable. So you can do in-person training, which is far more effective. You can also decide as to how you're going to approach this in terms of, like what we do is we have an internal online academy. So if they want to do external training, staff have to prove themselves by doing internal courses first. Then obviously we need document training, right? What gets measured gets managed. Peter Drucker. That's a really, really powerful statement, because if we're just training for the sake of training and then we're just giving money away for nothing, but we can't ever as a company sit and say we've achieved our goals, we've achieved what we wanted to do, or we haven't achieved, and we need to realign and the focus. And the big thing in documentation is the honesty. You need to make sure your documentation is accurate, because if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, there's no point in trying to hide it or address it. So the first thing you need to look at is training records. Training records can be very simple. It can be simple attendance registers. You can pull attendance registers from Teams. There's many ways to do that. So if you're doing online training via Teams, you can pull an attendance register for there. You can have forms that your staff sign, but you need to prove that they attended training on a certain date and time and for a certain duration. You have evaluation reports. These are where you can sit and say, okay, this is how effective training has been. And the biggest thing in adult training, and it is a big gap for a lot of people to take, is that in the end of the day, you're looking at, are they competent or are they not competent? Can your candidates do the job sufficiently, or do they need further training? And I think one of the beautiful things that I've learned and took a while to embrace as someone coming from academia was that no one cannot do the job. They're just not yet there. They're not yet competent. Right? So we need to decide as a company, are we going to spend the extra money and effort getting them there, or are we going to find another candidate? But we're never going to tell them they're too stupid to train. Okay. Another nice way to document training is certificates, whether it's internal certificates of recognition, whether it's if you're an accredited institution, whether you've got accredited certificates. But a lot of people, particularly the younger generation, they like to put things up to say, I got this badge, I got the certificate, I've accomplished this, and share it to their various platforms and media. Continuous improvement. So some fields need continuous improvement points. We're at the point where we're saying we're going to do continuous improvement points across the board. So we're going to sit and say competency points. So if you are in a certain field, say you're working in the factory, you need certain competency points from our academy to make sure that you've done the necessary health and safety and new releases or performances or changes and that have occurred in the field, that you stay current. And then obviously compliance documentation. So once again, we're looking at first aiders, we're looking at health and safety reps, we're looking at forklift operators, we're looking at tax certificates, tax training for your tax people. There's HR points that you need for HR professionals. So all this compliance documentation that various people need for their professional bodies to prove that they've done their training, and that you need to provide to government should there be any form of audit. And here comes the big thorn, reporting on training. So knowledge needs to be improved, challenged, and increased constantly, or it vanishes. And this is it. You need to sit and honestly say, this is the documentation, this is what we've done. Is our program working? Is it not working? Where can we improve? Because there's always room for improvement. Are we achieving our goals? Do we need to spend more money? Do we need to spend less money? It's never less money, but do we need to spend less money? And you need to be able to tell the people that are funding your training program exactly what you're accomplishing and how you're doing it. The big thing is if you're getting funding from your SETA, you're going to start with two very critical documents called the annual training report and a workplace skills plan. And I've only worked with 2 or 3 SETAs, but from what I hear from some of my colleagues, they're all awful to do. Right, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of slep, it's a lot that you've got to go through. They're not fun documents to fill in, but they are worth it in the end. The big thing is you can get what they call a mandatory or a discretionary grant from the SETAs. Now, the mandatory grant is where you can get up to 20% of your skills development levy that you paid back in your pocket to invest in training again, to reinvest. If you are using SETA money to pay for training, you cannot do bonding agreements. Okay, you can get in a lot of trouble if you do that. So this is where microlearning becomes quite useful if you're spending the money on microlearning, because it's small amounts of money, it's short courses that you're spending it on, and the people can quickly do the courses, they can quickly get their certificates or their attendance, and you can then put the money back in your pocket as a business. Okay. The annual training report and the workplace skills plan, they're going to be it's a statistics exercise for your skills development, for your SETA, for your sector education training authority. So they are going to want to obviously populate a Power BI at the end of the day, and most of it is based on trying to see, are they making targets in employment equity or affirmative action? If you're on the cusp of your SETA, like we are, we fall under Agri-SETA, but we are a pet food manufacturing business. So because we make pet food, we fall under Agri-SETA. But our Agri-SETA is more focused on farming and farming development. So we're on the cusp of that. So you get what they call OFO codes. And the OFO codes are statistic codes for your employees. So you would then have to say skills developer is OFO code 0014, and it'll have a number for your specific SETA. And you have to match each employee's employment level and job description with the closest OFO code that you can. And most of the time, they're not going to be exact. What we found with our SETA is that the Agri-SETA lacks the depth in the management levels. So they just have management as a level. They have senior manager, and that's just all managers or senior managers in a farming perspective. So you have to try and match and see what you can do, because you have to feed these statistics correctly through to the SETAs. And the more accurate and more descriptive your report is, the better chance there is that you're going to get more funding than the next person. The training as well, you're going to have so much training that you're going to do, and in the end of the day, you're going to have to break it down into like leadership training, orientation, and very basic, very broad sort of sweeps. And some SETAs want all your proof of evidence. They want a big, thick portfolio. Agri-SETA only asks for 5 or 6 examples that you scan in, and then they can audit you at any time. The annual training report is your wish list. So that's what you plan to train for your year. And the year runs from the 1st of April to the end of March. So your annual training report is what you're planning to do. And this is where you're saying, we're budgeting and we want to invest in leadership leadership training for our managers. We want to invest in operational training in terms of forklift drivers and that kind of stuff for those things, compliance training, and all those various things you want to do. You fill that into your annual training report. You are not bound to do that training. It's a wish list, it's an idea, it just shows that you are planning for your training for the year. On the other hand, you have the workplace skills plan. This is where you've reporting what you've done. So yeah, you need evidence for everything that you've done. You need to keep it for at least 5 to 7 years, like anything else that gets audited. And you fill this in and upload it to the portal. If you have lots of training because you're a bigger company or you've been quite active, most of the portals have an Excel template that you can download and then you upload it as an Excel batch job. Otherwise, you're going to go one for one, which is quite tedious on a lot of the portals. The workplace skills plan will want to know things like race, gender, age, employment level, all those kind of things, because once I say we're feeding the statistical machine. Okay. The nice thing about doing all of this is, aside from getting the funding on your mandatory grant, is that you can also report to management very accurately as to how they're doing on their EEAA points as well. So you will have a complete picture to give to management, and it's critical to give this complete picture to management that they can see what's happening as well. Because unless you're engaging your senior management as part of your training team, you're not going to go very far. Okay, then I spoke about discretionary grants. I don't have a slide for the discretionary grants. Discretionary grants is where you apply for funding for learnerships, apprenticeships, bursaries, and those kind of things. I'm not going to go too deep in there. I believe, Amy, we're going to have a session, or someone's going to have a session on that at some later point. But the discretionary grants, if you want to get discretionary grants, please look and see with your SETAs, talk to your SETAs, because they have targets where they're investing their money. And if your goals don't align to their skills list that they've appointed, you're probably not going to get the funding. They normally release a skills list in about August. It's on all the various websites that you can get quite easily. And it is definitely worthwhile to make friends within your SETA. Some of the SETAs I know are terrible to get hold of. Some of the SETAs are really great. They give you their personal WhatsApp numbers. So it really does depend on the field that you're in and the SETA you're dealing with. Getting support on all of this is a bit daunting sometimes and can be quite costly. The one thing that I am going to say is there is an organization called the ASDA. They are a professional body for skills developers, and they offer really great support. There's just a little bit of their roles and responsibilities. The big thing is that their vision is to be a leading developer and maintain the credibility of skills development profession, regardless of industry and sector. You find on this group that there are people here that are dealing directly with the SETAs. They can give you inside information. They can often tell you what's going to happen before the changes in your SETAs, and they can give you all the guidance and help that you can. And it helps to be registered as a professional body. They've obviously got designations inside their body, technician, practitioner, and master. And it just helps you as well that you can develop further as a skills developer and deal with all these various things by following these competencies. Okay, that's my little song. A little under half hour. Do we have any questions?
So thank you, Chris. Let me just ask if our guests could put their hands up, and then I will just read out your name and then you can unmute yourself. Thank you for the presentation, Chris. That was fantastic, very informative. And maybe if you don't mind just going back a slide, just so we can see that organization's information, or maybe one further back, maybe one more. There we go. So the Association for Skills Development in South Africa. Thanks. Okay, so let's maybe start with the questions. I'm not seeing any hands. Maybe I've missed some hands, but if you have a question, just raise your hand. Okay, Musa, you are our first hand, so you can unmute yourself, please.
Good evening, Amy and Chris and the team on the call. First of all, I want to thank you guys to give us this presentation. It was very helpful and very productive So my first question is, can we get this presentation or we're not going to get it? My second question is, can this be suggested to our companies where we work? For example, I'm in the banking industry, and this is very helpful. And there's some information, you think you know the information, but you know a little of them. Besides that, I'm doing my business management with IQ, so I'm happy that IQ is doing this session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Musa. Let me answer the first question. We are recording the session and we will share the link tomorrow with you all. Chris?
If your company is paying salaries, they are paying a skills development levy, which means they are assigned to a SETA, which means they are entitled to getting mandatory grants back. So if your company has less than, I think, 50 employees, they're supposed to, they have the option of outsourcing skills development facilitation. And if they've got more than 50 employees, they should have a skills development facilitator appointed within there. So yes, any company who's paying salaries does have access to the SETAs and does have access to the mandatory grants. So you just need to find out which SETA your company's assist.
I think it's bank SETA.
Signed
If
with.
I remember correctly, he said bank.
It's banks.
Yeah.
It's banks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Musa. Thank you, Chris. Candice, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Okay, so I've got a question regarding my current skills development reporting. So I have an employee that was awarded a bursary for the 23-24 plan, skills plan. So the employee started studying in August 2023. The studies was for 1 year. And in effect, they completed their studies in August 2024. Would I include this training/bursary with my current submissions for the 2024-2025 submission as actual training?
Okay, August 24, you said, yes, that would be, you would include that, yes. So to be any training that was, well, it depends. If you claimed it when you started to pay for it, you should claim the training on completion of training. Which was now completed in that time. So as long as you haven't claimed it in the year before, you should be able to claim it without any worries there.
Okay, 100%. Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you, Candice. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, but I can see a question in the chat. Is there a time frame for how long the training takes?
No. No. There's guidelines as to how long it should take on various unit standards. Going back, I think the easiest one is something like driving a forklift. They say that you should learn how to drive a forklift in 5 days. But if you have a candidate that takes 25 days, you can claim for 25 days of training. You can try. I mean, they have 5-10 tries until they're competent, as long as you're spending money on training. There's no time frame. The only thing is you can't claim for the same training twice. So if it does go over a year, you can't claim from, I mean, if you start claiming in March of this year, you can't claim again because they finished it in April next year when you do your submission.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? You can pop them into the chat or you can raise your hands. I'm on patrol. So I've got a couple of questions, Chris. I think what was actually surprising to me was that you can claim for orientation.
Yes.
That is something that I think, you know, us as a business have just not really had on our radar.
Let's be honest. Can employees function without knowing where coffee is and a toilet?
No.
I mean, that
some
is,
training takes a week, orientation.
Yes, I mean, at Pontigo, our orientation is about 4 or 5 days. So yes, it's one of the things. The big thing is to document it sufficiently. So you can sit and say that you had a training session for health and safety with your health and safety manager, and that was 30 minutes. You had a session with, and as long as you got the attendance registers, it's valid training, and it's essential training because
Yes.
we do need to spend time teaching staff how to work safely and effectively inside their new environment.
Yes.
It's
No, for
money.
sure.
It's money that you're giving out anyway, and you can actually start claiming it back.
Yes, absolutely. Every hour is billable. Another question from my side while I wait for any other questions from the floor. So you put this wish list together, and your wish list is 500,000 Rand. And then the SETA tell you you've been awarded 100,000 Rand. So how do you then get more money the following year if you end up spending 400,000 Rand of the business's money and 100,000 of the SETA's? Can you then expect something more the following year?
The mandatory grant is capped at 20% of your STL.
So you're never going to be able to claim more than that.
No, the legislation is quite clear as to how to refund it. So they will look and see how much of your training aligns with the goals, how much of it is valid according to them. Some of the SETAs have quite a comprehensive engagement, but for the most part, you wait to see what you get. But you can't expect, because you're spending 500,000, you're going to get 500,000. If your skills development levy is only 20% of your skills development levy is only 100,000. That'll be your cap.
Okay, got you.
I see
Okay,
a
that makes
hand.
sense. Thank you. See, Brandon, you have a hand?
Yes. Thank you for the explanation, though. It's been helpful. What I want to know is that SETA, right? What is SETA basically all about, and what particular does it support all companies, or if you work for a particular company, do you apply for any skills development that you want to improve within the company? So I would like to know more, basically, the SETA, and also does the company, do you request from the company to fund you, and obviously different courses that you can do. So for example, let's say like me, I'm in accounts, I'm in admin. So let's say I want to upskill myself basically in where I'm working in. Can you go to SETA and say, look here, I want to upskill in this is the prices, and then can a company fund that?
Okay, that's a great question. So the first thing you're going to say is, can you? I'm going to take that from the back and go forward. Can you approach a SETA directly? No. Your business has to approach them, and it has to be through the Skills Development Facilitator who's been appointed in your business. They are the communication point between your business and the SETA, and they have specific forms that they need to fill in and do the communications. Often the Skills Development Facilitation falls under HR. So HR is a good point, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction of that person. The SETAs were established to collect taxes from businesses and reinvest that tax money into training and encourage businesses to do training for some form of rebates and rewards. And particularly focus on skills development and EE and AA points of employment equity and affirmative action targets. So yeah, the SETAs are existed. There's 21 different SETAs at this stage, and they've got various rules and forms that differ from industry to industry. So if you are an accountant, it depends on the industry that your business is in as to which SETA they're aligned with. There's not one just for accountants and another one just for skills developers and so forth and so forth. It goes about the industry that your business is working in. Does that answer your question, Brandon?
Yes, definitely. So like I'm in the car trade, so I'm working for a car dealership. So I'm not sure if we do have, but I need to
there will be a manufacturing SETA for you there.
Yes.
And a car trade, are you manufacturing or are you selling cars?
Basically selling cars.
Okay, so yeah, then you probably have a smaller business there, but there will be someone appointed. So it's normally in the smaller businesses, it's normally the owner or the manager themselves that is the skills development facilitator.
Yeah, that's correct.
So Brandon, I just wanted to add to what Chris was saying. So an alternative route, which we really encourage in our business and in general in our training, is you should table your training needs in your performance management meeting. So you are supposed to use that opportunity to identify where your own areas for improvement are, and that's a shared responsibility. So it's not up to your manager to say to you, you need to do this course and you need to improve on that. It's actually a dialogue that you have together with your manager, and you identify what your training needs are because you want to improve this area of your development and your skills and competencies. And your motivation in that discussion is, I will be more productive and I will be upskilled in my job to understand and comprehend more, add more to the business, and the various reasons that Chris shared with us earlier as well. So that is really where that conversation starts. If you don't table that conversation with your direct manager, you cannot then go to the SETA and say, I'm not getting supported, help me with this training. It's very important that you follow, like Chris was saying, that process of going via HR, but also start with your direct manager and just have that informal conversation when you meet to discuss your PMCs.
Another thing I would like to add is one of the duties of a skills development facilitator, which is a legal requirement for most businesses, is they need to draw up a skills matrix. So they need to, with managers, identify where there's shortcomings in skills and that for staff, and that helps them decide where to spend money or time, because some of the skills can just be fixed with time internally, and guides them. And if you're not speaking up in your performance review to say, I have this shortcoming, your manager won't be able to give that information over to the skills developer, and they can't list that on the skills matrix.
Yeah.
And that skills matrix is also aligned with the skills matrix of the SETA, and the better they align up, the more funding you're going to get.
And be prepared, sorry, just to add to that, I see a hand and a question. Be prepared to be turned down. So if you are, working as an accountant and you'd like to now go and become a doctor, it's very unlikely that the business that has employed you to do that job will now go and fund your studies to become something else. So you have to have an expectation that what you're requesting to be upskilled in is actually aligned to your job, because that's how you get the benefit from the training, because the business also has to get the benefit from you being better skilled. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. Sometimes people can get upset if they don't get the funding and might feel unfair, but it has to align to your job from a business perspective. Okay, Musa, I see a hand from you again.
Yes, Amy. Basically, what I wanted to mention, this is an eye-opener, because as employees, we assume that the managers will come to us and say, you are shortcoming on this, maybe on accounting or on whatever, your daily job. So this now gives us a challenge to say, when we sit on those reviews and say, guys, I need to upskill to A, B, and C, this is very helpful. I'm so glad that because I'm on leave now, and then I'll go back to work and say, guys, how many times? Because I don't remember in my department, since I've been with my bank for 3 years now, whereby they're sending somebody to study something or to upgrade to whatever skill, but the chances are there, SETA is here, and so guys,
Yes.
something is not happening here. So I think it's something that I need to drive, because we are in the industry whereby you work with money all the time, high value transaction, all that. So soft skills, orientation, whatever that is. But thank you so much, guys. This is the eye opener. Thank you.
Thank you, Musa.
I just want to get to Taryn. Taryn's asked if I leave a company, can I keep my training certificate? They shouldn't. I'm not too versed on the legalities about that, but they shouldn't, because if you've done the training, it's yours. It's not the company's. So they should be giving you your certificate. But that is a very bad practice. It doesn't encourage openness and those kind of things in your employees.
Okay, we have another hand, Priscilla. Musa, you can lower your hand, so I know it's the hand.
Okay, Priscilla?
Greetings, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. I work for an NPO, right? So usually every year, whenever our personal development plans, they lapse, they get renewed. But we actually never do get a chance to study for whatever it is that we have tabled. Actually, I missed out on the presentation, but I caught this part, which I'm glad I did. So I get to ask a few questions. The reason I am now paying for my studies is because I see that, okay, the time is going, and none of the tabled requests are being met. So what I wanted to find out, because now this is an NPO and we are funded by stakeholders, most of the time they complain about financial constraints, right? So and also usually, since we are an enterprise and supplier developer, mostly they focus on developing the SMMEs. And then when it comes to us, it becomes a bit of a challenge. So this is something that we need to inquire with the HR. And then when we get audited year after year, it's basically the same the reasons that there's financial constraints. And then what I also wanted to find out is that we do have a training facilitator, the skills development facilitator, right? But he's basically there to train and assist our SMMEs. So I wanted to find out the route which I could maybe advise our HR to take to inquire about this. You mentioned that there are different SETAs.
Okay. Priscilla, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Priscilla. So yeah, you can quickly work out which SETA you're in just with a simple Google. But the big thing to realize is you're in a non-profit organization, so obviously funds are tight. How many employees are you more or less?
Okay, in our region, we are about 6 employees.
Okay. So realistically speaking, if you want to know more or less how much money your business is or your MPO is going to probably get from government for training, work out more or less what the salaries are. Take 1% and then take 20% of that 1%, and that's the maximum they're going to get back. And 10 to 1, that's not going to be enough to fund one person's studies.
Okay.
So that's the realistic way of looking at it. So in your small organizations, they tend to focus more micro learning. Because they can't fund big degrees, they can't fund big diplomas, so they're rather going to do smaller training or compliance-based training, which they have to do. So they might do a first aid course or something like that instead of a degree to fill those funds and to use those funds effectively. So that's a big thing. Like Amy said earlier, you need to be prepared to hear the word no when asking for money for training, because what's a priority for you is maybe not necessarily a company priority, but it is something you need to raise. If I can give any advice to that, I do it a lot to the people here. I say, when approaching senior management, don't sell the degree, sell the benefits of you having the degree to the company, right?
Yes.
You need to sell yourself. You need to say, I will be able to perform effectively if I have this, and this is the reasons. This is how it's going to benefit the business if I move forward on this. And that's the best way to get funding back, by selling the benefits to the business. But if you want to know why your business is not funding your degree or funding your diploma and you feel very negative about it, you can quickly sit and guess more or less what the salary budget is. Take 1% of that and then take 20% of that. And that's the maximum they can get. And that gives you ideas more or less what most companies are working with in terms of a training budget.
All right, much appreciated. I have a second question.
Yes.
All right. Since I was late in the meeting, the presentation, you did mention it's being recorded and that you're gonna share.
Yes.
I wanted to ask if I go through the presentation, is it possible for me to ask more questions if I find anything that I need to ask questions about?
You can email us, we'll send it through to Chris, and then we'll reply to you.
All right, thank you so much.
Please don't all 57 do that. But if you do, then just give us some time.
Okay.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Thank you.
Of course, you.
Good evening, Doc and Chris.
Evening.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Oh,
sure.
wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for such an informative webinar. My question to you, Chris, can you recommend a service provider or a college that offers SDF programs? There are a lot of fly-by-night institutions out there. Maybe if you can just recommend one or two to me. Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot of fly-by-nights, and the quickest way to identify who's still fly-by-nights and who's not is to look and see if they're using what's called unit standards. But the unit standards are falling away. There's now going to be QCTO standards. So the big thing is to check that the course has a QCTO number, and then you know it's an accredited course. There are hundreds of providers across the country. I don't know what area you're based in, but there's hundreds of providers across the country. The big thing is just to make sure it's got a QCTO number. And
I'm
then
based
you know
in
that
Pretoria.
it's Pretoria. Okay, I'm a bit far away from you, so the providers I use are based in PE and that. The big thing you're going to find is when you do the training, you're going to have to do a lot of writing because it's got to be in your own handwriting the whole time. They're big on that. There's often a couple of courses together that form the SDF course. But yeah, the big thing is to check and see if it's got a QCTO number for the course. Then you know it's a legit course. Okay.
Chris, the Association for Skills Development, are those unit standard based and they're still registered and they're still recognized?
That's just for, they don't offer training, they offer support.
Okay.
It's a professional body for
Okay.
trainers. Yeah.
Okay, got you. Thanks.
But yeah, also that network can very easily help you find providers.
And just another piece of advice on Corsi. So you can Google search on SAQA any of the SAQA numbers that are used and the QCTO information that Chris was referencing. All of that information is actually registered on their websites. And in order for us to offer qualifications, we have to be registered with SAQA. So you should be able to Google the qualification number and find that that institution is registered with SAQA to offer that program. And that's your best bet of getting the information that you need. Okay, thank you, Orwam. You are up.
Good evening, guys.
Evening.
Chris. I have a question, but it's more for a hypothetical one. Say you're working for a company and you receive the skills development training and you obtain, say, a certificate. Obviously, you become more employable and you gain more skills and you're more appealable to other companies. And say you do go to another company, can you then acquire or say appeal for another skills development training?
The skills development facilitation course is fairly standard and they don't update it much. They might update it a bit later when the QCTO and the SAQA QCTO handover is finished, but when that's going to be, we don't know. But it's a case of once you're trained as an accountant, you're an accountant, and once you're trained as a skills developer, you train as a skills developer. There are micro-learning courses that will always be around that to improve you.
Yeah.
But there won't be a new unit standard out there for you to do, unless there's a big change in the way government's doing it, which is happening now. There's a big change between SAQA moving over to QCTO and many of the unit standards falling away and being replaced. But you don't need to be a qualified skills development facilitator to hold the position of skills development facilitator in a company. You can learn everything you need to from your SETA.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to what Orwam was asking there, Chris. So
yeah,
the skills development funding it happens at a business level. So what Chris mentioned earlier was you cannot hold somebody in a contract if the skills has been paid for by the SETA. So if your business funds your studies for that year, they can't force you to stay there for that year and pay it back. Am I correct, Chris?
Yes.
They shouldn't. No, it's a big no-no.
But then if you transfer jobs and you go somewhere else, and that sometimes organizations will make you wait for 6 months, or they'll make you wait for a year before you are actually eligible for the training. Because remember, the training is in response to your performance. So you
Yes.
need to go through at least 1 or 2, performance appraisals before you establish what actually are your training needs. So it's likely that you won't be able to go from one, unless I'm misunderstanding you, from one business to another
No,
and
you do.
benefit from the training in both companies. You're more than likely going to have to wait when you join the new company.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
Great.
All right, cheers.
Thank you. All right, so I'm just scanning the chat again. Can you recommend on Corsi? We've answered that question. That's great. I don't see any other questions from the floor. Any other questions last minute? You can just pop your hand up. But overall, thank you. Oh, Kanya coming in late. Anything from you, Kanya? Oh, you muted.
Can you
There we
guys hear
go.
me now?
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So
What do you
just
have
a
for us?
quick one. It's so interesting because I've just started a new job and I'm very interested in doing facilitation. I even asked my trainer, how do I go about it? Because I thought one needs to, for instance, have a BCom and then do their PGCE. So
No.
she told me that because I'm in the BPO industry. She mentioned that the company can accredit it. Now I asked her if I'm going to another company that is not within the industry. Now, does one need to have a certain paper? Because she just says that accreditation goes to your CV.
Okay, so to be a facilitator, there is a facilitator training. It's on a unit standard,
Okay.
and it's not industry specific. So it's just as like it's the basics of teaching. They're different ones. The one that I did, they have you go to class for a week and then you got like a 3-month portfolio that you got to deliver, which is rather painful. But once you've got it in, you're accredited as a facilitator. So it teaches you how to teach. And then you need to then become versed in your various unit standards, which are industry specific. So it teaches you how to teach to adults specifically, because adult training is very different from training kids.
Yeah.
And it teaches you how to teach the adults. And then once you've got that skill of teaching, you can apply it to any industry in any course. So the facilitation standard is the same across the board, just like the accreditor and the moderator standard is the same across
And the
all
assessor,
industries.
and being an
Yes.
assessor. Oh,
Yes.
okay. So can you pretty please, can you guys, because I'm in Cape Town, but it doesn't matter if I can study, virtually or whatsoever. Can you guys please, for instance, give me, for instance, institutions that are very affordable?
Look, those courses
Okay,
are
there's a lot
fairly
of
affordable.
criteria coming into this request.
Sorry.
Your affordable is not the same as ours, and if your business is going to pay, does it really matter? So I think your best bet, Kanya, please save us from this request, is honestly just Google it. When you find
Okay.
online training provider SDF, take the unit standard number, put it into the SAQA database, SAQA search unit standard, and it will come up. The web page will come up for you, and you can literally pop that in, and you can actually see who is actually allowed to offer this program and what is in the program. So when it's unit standards based, it's the same for everybody in the country. You have to offer that program. How you offer it changes, but you have to offer that curriculum.
The other
Sorry,
thing,
Chris.
yes. No, the other thing I want to say is also when you're looking at the unit standards, there is a last registration date listed in the unit standard. So just check that date
Yes.
hasn't passed.
Yes.
Some of the courses you had to register before June last year to make the end date, and you've got a certain date to complete them. So when checking on the unit standard, because they're moving over to QCTO, I don't think QCTO has the facilitator and the assessor out yet on their platform. They didn't last I checked, but I could be mistaken there. But check and see. But you can look on the SAQA site and you can go facilitation, and it'll bring it up there, and you can see it there.
Okay, thank you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to just do one favor for you, Kanya. I'm going to copy and paste the QCTO link for the skills programs, and you can literally search for all the skills programs in there. And then they also have the qualifications listed exactly the same way. Just look Google QCTO qualifications, and you can literally look at the list. Anybody can access that.
Thank you. Giovanni.
Great. All right, I think that is our session wrapped up. We are bang on time, 7 o'clock, just in time to go and have dinner. Thank you again, Chris. This was very insightful. Speak on behalf of all of our guests this evening that this has been very valuable. Even myself, I was an HR manager for a number of years and I didn't handle the SDF element. So I even learned some things this evening, which is fantastic. You know, we must keep learning.
Yes.
That is what this whole session is about. So you're never too old to learn, you're never too young to learn, and you're never too experienced to learn something new. Just be open and transparent with yourself, with your managers, have realistic expectations, understand the greater landscape about funding and what is really going to be, what that money is really going to be spent on. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to email us. And then we will just divert those questions through to Chris, and we will load the recording onto our YouTube channel tomorrow and share that. Chris, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and your insights and your presentation, answering our questions. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to be here.
Right, so that's it, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording, and if you would like to just exit, we will then